Talking to the Dead, Chapter 7. Here we're going to pick up with something pretty fascinating, and this is when we really start to notice that working on the dream, in the dream, as we talked about in the previous chapters, will always exhaust us, frustrate us, and make us feel more and more separated than anything ever has. Yet, becoming more aware that you are the awareness, noticing the avatar doing the dream in the dream, puts you what? Thirdly, removed from that which appears to be happening. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about exploring that witnessing angle. Kelly speaks to this in all of her videos. Literally for the last 10 years, it's been a direct pointing in every video, whether it's been referred to as one thing or another. It's always the finger pointing to the moon. As we mentioned in the previous chapter, Alan Watts put it really, really nicely. It's like trying to bite your own teeth or look at your own eye. So when Kelly's working with clients, she'll often use kind of the analogy of, imagine this world just being one mirror that never ends. That mirror just goes and goes and goes. There's no end to it. It's the only thing that is. How can it know itself? How can it know itself as that forever, boundless thing reflecting nothing at all? It can't know itself, right? That is what we refer to as this. We call it God, universe, whatever you refer to it as. It is the expansion that never ends, that cannot be named. Now, thisness that is boundless is gorgeous. It's all of this. It's the eternal blissful love Kelly experienced when she left her body and initially went to that area of blackness she refers to as the abyss. Before what appeared to be the experience of that beautiful billowy pink area. Now we can name all these things, and we do. But what if there was no naming anything? What if nothing was ever labeled, and it was part of the internal telepathic dialogue that's constantly and continuously running, which is a vibration, not a tone or a sound, because it needs nothing to communicate with. It's all that it knows. Itself is all that it knows. Are you starting to understand what's being pointed to here? Some call it no-thingness. Some call it Advaita. Some call it non-duality. I don't care what you call it, because again, as soon as you label it, you're separate from it, and now the identity gets to thrive again as an ego. It really is hilarious. Now, in that boundless abyss, as you hear it, I want you to ask yourself, and you may even want to pause here and give yourself a few minutes to reflect on this before you proceed. How does the mind feel hearing that perception of God, isness, thisness? What's arising in the avatar when it hears this? It's again a really great place to pause and reflect for a few minutes before proceeding. Notice that abyss cannot identify with anything, nor does it need to. It's a self-contained, boundless thinging. It is boundless aliveness, eternal. It has no ends. It's hard to conceptualize, yes? Yet we do it when we go to sleep every night. This avatar lies in its bed, appears to unplug from the world. Where does it go? Some of us say dreamland, but we've already mentioned that this is the dream. So where does that unconscious part of the avatar, or the connection to the avatar, go? Again, notice what the avatar's feeling when it hears this. Is there a discomfort or a peacefulness around it? Is there an acceptance and a willingness, even if you're not experientially aware of this happening? Now I want you to think about all the times that the avatar has laid down, unplugged, and started to drift off, and often jars itself awake unknowingly, but for a split second, as it seems to be coming back into consciousness, has this awareness of this abyss we speak about. We may call it feelings of falling. It's a feeling like you're falling and something wakes you up before you hit the ground. That's how I've heard it referred to. Yet, very few have ever talked about actually hitting the ground, and the ones that have really are having the dream of hitting the ground, I assure you. Because the abyss has no edges, no floors, no walls, nothing to grab a hold of. It is a free fall that never ends. So what has happened in the dream is the avatar has come to consciousness, maybe for a moment or maybe to fully stir awake, and for what appeared to be a brief few moments, brief few seconds, experienced that free fall consciously. This is the deliciousness called the abyss. Now, when we become more aware of that, it expands. We talked about this already. The more the avatar is connected with the abyss in this awareness, it begins to see what we call a separation. But the difference now is it's not the avatar now looking, it's the awareness noticing. It's as if something in the script has flipped. And now your purview and your preview is coming one or two or a bazillion or a boundless amount of ways back. Some call it in the back or the seat of the soul. I don't care what you call it. Again, every time we label things here, we make it harder on ourselves. Which is why Kelly rarely speaks to this exact thing. This non-dualistic Advaita perspective. Again, more labels, because it's not even that. Yet it's the only way to seem to engage in this dreamscape. The cartoon needs the labels, the words, the symbols, and the ability to communicate about them with what appear as others. That is its experience here. This is an interesting place because this is where everything starts to come together again. the things we've discussed, like the soul plan, which we're going to go deeper into in our next chapter, those things aren't needed in the abyss because there's no others. Nothing needs a part or a script or an identity or a beingness. It's all of this. It's a celebration of it all. Yet in that celebration of being it all, which is literally the most unbelievable, beautiful, loving feeling you'll ever experience, there's a curiosity, apparently. And that's just the name Kelly gives to it as she's defining and describing it. Yet there's nothing that's curious because it's infinite wisdom. Yet to be able to experience its own infinite wisdom, it has to appear twice removed, at least twice removed. Because there needs to be a component that reasons, that understands, that can inquire, that can be curious. So back to the mirror. If I am the mirror, I being the abyss, not this avatar, how can I, being the abyss, not this avatar, know myself uniquely? I'm all of this. Again, I, being the abyss, not the avatar. How can it know itself uniquely? How can it know what it feels like to love if it's boundless love? How can it know what it feels like to extend that love if there's no others to extend it to? How can it know what it feels like to have an arm, a leg, a physical beingness, the ability to hug others, the ability to engage with others in an intimate physical way? If it's all of this, it simply cannot. Yet imagine that mirror, as boundless as it is without the label of mirror, cracking into a bazillion, endless, countless amount of pieces. Now it's no longer a mirror, but shards of mirror. There are other aspects of this, facets of amazingness. It has something to compare itself to. Oh, look at that little shard over there. It's triangular shaped, and I'm rectangular shaped. Now I have a comparison. Oh, look at that one. It actually looks almost round. And now we've got the idea of incarnation. One, or not even that, becomes many. And again, not even that. Now we have what we refer to as duality, because we still apparently need to perceive this in a linear way. So although the mirror has broken into a bazillion aspects of others, it's still on a flat cartoon script. It's unable to have much depth. It's unable to really, truly, tangibly grasp the thing we call gravity in a way that is anti-gravity. Do you see where we're going with this? It needs duality to coexist within all of the other aspects, which also require gravity and the universal laws, as we refer to them, which aren't universal at all. They're in fact very specific to the cartoon. There's nothing universal about that. Well, I guess there is if you think about it this way. Universal itself is yet another label limiting the boundless ability for there to be multiverses. And more than even that. This is how quickly the mind can be blown down the rabbit hole, into the abyss, yet nothing is free falling. Thisness, this boundless aliveness, is the space where all things are no longer things. All concepts fall away. Thoughts, ideas and concepts about right and wrong, sin and perfection, goodness and badness, they need the mirror to exist, but only when it's in fragments, only when there's aspects, only when there's duality. You've never, ever, for a second, even been that. Not even a little bit. And the more time the one that seems to be listening to this right now hears this, it's like a siren's call, inviting it back to itself. Now I'm going to ask again, reach into this avatar to find out what it's experiencing and feeling and hearing all of this. But now I want you to do something a little differently. Where there was once disease about it, or excitement for it, I want you to notice those two are concepts, yet they're pulling it away from itself. Can you see that? Can you notice it? As soon as it needs to have a thought to understand itself, that's the finger. The moon, that which cannot be named, is actually beyond the moon. It's so much bigger than we can fathom. Yet to know it, to really, truly, experientially know it, requires the unraveling of the things that point to it. And the more those eradicate themselves through this unraveling process, those cracks in the sidewalk, the abyss, the grand mirror without a crack, becomes more and more and more known experientially. And then the fun of getting to engage when it's in aspected form, shattered into shards, all unique, no two the same, can be explored and experienced and enjoyed, because there's nothing that ever thinks it's being that. It remains aware that it is just watching a grand, amazing linear cartoon identify with itself in a way that it's never been able to. It enjoys every hug, and it equally enjoys being smacked right across the face. It enjoys having things and equally enjoys those things moving away from it. It enjoys knowing being born, learning how to walk, how to talk, how to experience here. Again, in linear form, thinking there's time and space, and that it must start at some infancy and become something older and wiser. Yet it also equally enjoys growing old, pruning up, losing its teeth, losing its memories, and returning to that which it apparently thinks it came from. We call it death. Yet that's never, ever, ever been the way of it. We endeavored to deliver this message in a way that felt, again, palpable as you're hearing it. We purposely moved through this with a little bit of ease, very little whimsy, and very direct pointing. This comes from Kelly's new guide. As we mentioned, she's all business, this one. She said, we've given them a few days of whimsy. Let's get back into this meaty stuff. And so, with this, you will probably walk away, and this chapter will create a lot of questions in the mind. It will want to answer them all, yet there is no answer, nor is there a question. The best way we've found in the story of Kelly to handle that discomfort of wanting to know, thinking it doesn't know, and trying to answer the question is simply noticing when that arises, there's disease in the body. Even in curiosity, you'll notice a little bit of anxiousness. I can't control that. I need to know that. They appear to know and I don't. There's something here that realizes this or feels like it realizes this, and yet there appears to be something that doesn't. If duality can thrive in the question and in the answers, that in itself shows you they're just more fingers pointing to the moon. If you've ever worked with anyone in Advaita or direct pointing, this is where you will be invited to start. Moving through your day, and anything that these apparent eyeballs seem to be noticing, asking it, where am I in this? The I that's noticing, that's inquiring and answering this question can't be the truth of it. There simply are too many characters trying to play out simultaneously. It doesn't feel authentic, right? It feels twice or thusly removed. A Course in Miracles really tries and endeavors to do this unraveling process in a 365-day process. It starts with the unraveling, just getting the reader to notice a table or a chair or a thing and simply say, I am not that. Yet scientifically, in the dreamscape, even the scientists point to this. In our own dreamscape, we've written in confusion. The scientists will say, those are atoms and molecules and they're moving very quickly, which we say causes a formation of solid. Yet that's never been true. They simply cannot understand that which they cannot understand. And so it needs to define it and give it an answer, which in itself does what? Creates yet another finger pointing to the moon. It keeps removing the character over and over and over again until some fire burning within itself never being the truth, starts to align more with that which it is through the inquiry of, I am not that, more and more space sets in for it to know it not being a thing, but the awareness, and not even that. We will pick up here with soul plans. This is where we start to really delve deeper into what the experiential avatars seek to know to return to the abyss, and why that siren calling begins to arise. Much love. Until next time, be patient and kind with yourself, and move about today simply noticing, am I this? If anything tries to answer it, let that pass through. Don't engage in the conversation about it. Don't engage in the questions or the answers. Just notice that silent nothingness that arises there, and more of that can fill in.